Ah, the 2010s. A decade that started with silly bands, followed up with the death of a gorilla, and ended with a lockdown was certainly a ride and a half. I finished elementary, middle, and high school in this decade and began university. But what about the video games? How did we, as virgins, spend our precious time making our brains rot instead of actually being productive members of society? In terms of the 2010s, the gaming industry started to become a huge capitalistic nightmare, and I mean, it already kind of was, but now even more so, with the advent of DLC and microtransactions. But hey, there was a lot of great games that came out in the 2010s, and that's what I'd like to focus on with this video. Now, instead of doing a regular countdown like I would normally do on this channel, I'm going to go through every year of the decade, 2010 to 2020, and pick my favorite games from each year. Also, yes, before you ask, 2020 is technically a part of the 2010s as the new... Just a little editor's note. By this logic, 2010 would technically not be a part of the 2010s either because, you know, it would be a part of the 2000s. Now, just whatever, it was a stupid thing. It was a dumb mistake, and, yeah. Decade doesn't start as the time of this script writing until 2021. I'm sorry if that made me sound like a pretentious know-it-all, but as a certain man who never made a woman orgasm once said, facts don't care about your feelings. And you, my dear, must have been the facts, because you didn't care about my feelings. So with that being said, here are my favorite games of the decade. "2010 was an interesting year, to say the least. Silly bands were all the rage, memes were starting to become more mainstream, it was the end of the scene era, Haiti had an earthquake, the Blackhawks won the Stanley Cup for the first time in 49 years, Vancouver hosted the Olympics, and the spectacular Spider-Man, as well as Spider-Man 4, were both unfortunately cancelled. Which, is a fact that I still can't stomach to this day. As for gaming, Call of Duty tackled the Cold War with Black Ops, which, while being total US propaganda, was still a fun time. Mario Galaxy 2 was more or less the same as Galaxy 1, and yet it was still an excellent game. Mafia 2 was a fun time, arguably the best Pokemon games of all time were localized, and in Japan, Pokemon Black and White came out, which were pretty good as well. Halo Reach was fantastic, Mon Nation Racers was underrated, God of War 3 was pretty good, and Microsoft decided to rip off Sony's iToy with the Kinect, and Sony ripped off Nintendo's Wii with the PlayStation Move. Red Dead Redemption was amazing, but what was the true best game of the year? What game truly defined 2010? I'd say it was the amazing Fallout New Vegas. If you've seen any of my previous videos, you probably saw this one coming. Fallout New Vegas is a perfect open world game. You're given so much freedom, and yet the open world isn't all that big, but it feels huge. There are so many charming characters that you'll meet along your travels. The game has great mission structure, interesting locations, great humor, and fun weapons. It's a great reason why this game is my game of the year for 2010. 2011, personally, for me, it was interesting. I graduated from elementary school and moved on to the hell that was middle school. I had my first taste of heartbreak. Oh, and I went to the United States for the first time, and boy oh boy, Maine was certainly something. As for global events, we had the devastating Japan earthquake, the Bin Laden manhunt ended, Stephen Harper was re-elected by mistake, the Bruins won the Stanley Cup, which is a fact that I'm still trying to erase from Wikipedia. There was a royal wedding, which was something I was supposed to care about for some unknown reason. And as for gaming, wow, this year ruled. But let us get two things out of the way. Modern Warfare 3 sucks, and I hate it, and PlayStation's network got hacked, and I was offline for like 2 months. Now that we got those out of the way, let's talk about the good that came out of 2011. Nintendo released one of their best handhelds ever with the 3DS, and it came with Super Mario 3D Land and a fantastic remake of Ocarina of Time. North America got Pokemon Black and White. Uncharted 3 was awesome, Drive Thru San Francisco was awesome, and in my opinion, it's a better game than Grand Theft Auto 5. Saints Row the Third rocked, Batman Arkham City was great, Marvel vs. Capcom 3 was great, Rayman Origins was fantastic, Skyrim was great, Portal 2 was great, especially with a friend, Sonic Generations was awesome, one of the most popular and best games of all time, Minecraft, came out of beta and nearly won 2011's Game of the Year, but lost out to something that was just a little bit better. My Game of the Year for 2011 is Little Big Planet 2. Sony had one of the biggest losses in 2011 with their network being hacked, but Little Big Planet 2 more than made up for it. It was, in my opinion, the Xbox killer. After this, everyone that bought an Xbox rioted because they couldn't play this game. This is true, trust me. Little Big Planet 2 is better than its predecessor in every way. The story mode is much more in-depth, the music slaps, and it's overall just a fantastic video game. The amount of hours I poured into this game and the amount of levels I published over multiple accounts is astounding, and it's for this reason that Little Big Planet 2 is my Game of the Year for 2011. So the world didn't end in 2012, but some interesting events happened. I went to Disney World, Rage comics were popular for no goddamn reason, Vine was a thing, Gangnam Style was popular, Avengers came out, and Smash Box Office records, Obama was re-elected, Spider-Man got a okay reboot, The Dark Knight trilogy concluded, the LA Kings won the Stanley Cup, and London hosted the Olympics. And as for gaming, 2012 was an excellent year, although it wasn't nearly as good as the preceding years, in my opinion. Black Ops 2 put the Call of Duty series back on track, and it's a game that I treated way too harshly. Both Ratchet & Clank and Jak and Daxter got HD collections, Far Cry 3 was fantastic, Pokemon Black and White 2 released, and they were some of the best Pokemon games ever. I haven't played Fez, but I heard it was great. Telltale released The Walking Dead, and Sony and Nintendo released 2 new consoles, both of which flopped, one of which has 2012's Game of the Year as an exclusive. And that game is Little Big Planet Vita. Little Big Planet Vita is basically Little Big Planet 2 on the go, and that rules. It's just as polished as 2, and it's a game that got me through my 8th grade year, so it's definitely an important game for me, and for that reason, Little Big Planet Vita is my favorite game of 2012. I know I could have spent longer on this, but meh. 2013 was a year. It was the year that I went back to Toronto and started grade 8, I guess. As for global events, it was a fairly slow year. Philippines sadly got hit with a typhoon. There was the unfortunate Boston bombing. Nelson Mandela died. It was kind of scary. Rob Ford admitted to smoking crack. And on the more light side of things, the Blackhawks won the Stanley Cup, and more importantly, Boston didn't win the Stanley Cup. PK Subban won the Norris. New Pope dropped. Wow. 2013 was kind of boring in terms of global events. But when it came to gaming, 2013 was anything but boring. Sony and Microsoft released new consoles, those being the PlayStation 4 and Microsoft's third biggest mistake. Sony released The Last of Us, BioShock Infinite came out, Super Mario 3D World was an awesome time, especially with friends, Wind Waker got an awesome HD remake, Rayman Legends was fantastic, Injustice was great, Rockstar released the most profitable game of all time with Grand Theft Auto 5, Battlefield 4 was great, LEGO Marvel Super Heroes kicked major ass, and Ratchet & Clank Into the Nexus was a fun time. But my game of the year for 2013 has to go to Tearaway. Tearaway is incredibly underrated. It came out on a dying console, unfortunately, so not a whole lot of people got to experience this underrated gem. But for the few that did, they'd probably agree with me in saying it was one of the best games, if not the best game of 2013. The way it connects the real world and the game world is great. The graphics are great and the soundtrack is fantastic. and as such, it's my favorite game of 2013. 2014 was certainly a year, alright. It was the year that I went to Quebec. Sochi hosted the Winter Olympics and Price was the MVP. It was the year my Habs got screwed because of a certain Chris Kreider. Ebola happened, memes got more abstract, I learned how much high school sucked, and as for gaming, well, there were a lot of great games. This year was plagued with glitches, tales of broken matchmaking, clipping through the ground, and corrupt save files were all too commonplace. But even still, some fantastic games came out. Shadow of Mordor was like Assassin's Creed, but better. Mario Kart 8 was fantastic, but it's Mario Kart, so you know it was really good. Pokemon Alpha Sapphire and Omega Ruby were really good remakes. Far Cry 4 was decent. The Oddworld remake was fantastic. I haven't played Shovel Knight, but I heard it was great. Little Big Planet 3 eventually became a good game. Infamous Second Son was great. Smash 4, while being my least favorite Smash game, was excellent. I haven't played Transistor yet, but I've only heard great things about it. But my game of the year for 2014 has to go to South Park: The Stick of Truth. Now, while South Park sometimes has some takes that I disagree with, it is still one of my favorite TV shows. And when it comes to South Park: The Stick of Truth, I'm a huge fan. This game did South Park justice. The gameplay and music are fantastic, but what's really great is its attention to detail when it comes to its source material, and this game had me laughing out loud on multiple occasions. It also nearly made me puke a couple times. It's great, and for that reason, South Park: The Stick of Truth is my game of the year for 2014. 2015 was the year where the Blackhawks once again won the Stanley Cup, while Canada got a prime minister with nice hair, I guess. He still isn't very good. Two terrible people announced that they were running for presidency in the United States, while one mostly decent dude also announced that he was running for presidency. Note how I said mostly decent. I got into theater, and as for gaming, I gotta be honest, this year was kind of meh. Not terrible, not great, just meh. There were a few standout titles. Witcher 3, Metal Gear Solid 5, Yoshi's Woolly World, Bloodborne, and Rocket League were all great times, and I'm obviously omitting a few titles which I haven't played or did not play enough of, but I'd say the best game of 2015 was Super Mario Maker. Nintendo was in a rough spot when Mario Maker came out. Iwata had just passed away, they were releasing some pretty bad games, and their main home console was doing terribly. They had a few bright spots, though. In the previous year, in the final quarter, they managed to sell 1.91 million Wii U's, which isn't much, but it was their best showing since its launch. The 3DS was still doing well, and Amiibos were actually pretty popular. And Nintendo had an all-new IP under their belt with Splatoon. But even still, the Wii U sales were lacking, and Nintendo was ready to move on with the NX, which was later named the Switch. Now, what does this have to do with Mario Maker? Well, Mario Maker was a bright spot in an otherwise doomy and gloomy year for the company. It was honestly a fantastic game. It's pretty cool how you could do so much with so little, and while I think Little Big Planet is honestly the better game for creation, that doesn't mean that Mario Maker isn't worth your time. In fact, Mario Maker is more accessible than Little Big Planet, which is a huge advantage to Mario Maker. Plus, Mario Maker has some awesome amiibo support, and all this makes Mario Maker my game of the year for 2015. 2016 is quite nostalgic for my fellow Generation Zers. Filthy Frank was all the rage, I was on the news, Bernie got cheated by a terrible party which led to 4 years of, well, this man. Obama! A gorilla died and we all joked about it, a bunch of celebrities died, the Penguins won the Stanley Cup, the Habs traded PK, a bunch of teenage boys thought hating on trans people was a personality, and as for gaming, it's funny. I remember 2016 as a weaker year, but there were some damn good games that came out in 2016. None of which were that crappy Team Fortress 2 clone. Watch Dogs 2 was surprisingly fantastic. The Ratchet & Clank remake was good. Pokemon Go, despite being a silly little mobile game, nearly won Game of the Year for 2016 for me, and its launch was probably the closest thing we ever got to world peace. Pokemon Sun and Moon were fine. Battlefield 1 was great. I never played No Man's Sky, but I heard it got better over time. Now, I had two big picks for the Game of the Year this year, but unfortunately only one could make the cut. The two games I speak of are Doom and Uncharted 4, and my Game of the Year for 2016 goes to Uncharted 4. Uncharted 4 is easily my favorite Uncharted game. The gunplay has been fine-tuned to perfection. The story is excellent. The vehicles didn't make me want to off myself, which is rare for Naughty Dog games that don't have vehicles as the main focus. Crash 3. Swinging on ropes is fun, and there's an awesome Crash Bandicoot Easter egg. While Doom was a fantastic game, I just feel like Uncharted 4 was a bit better and is more deserving of 2016's Game of the Year. 2017 was kinda boring in terms of global events, and as for personal events, well, I went to New York with my class and nearly had a bit of a Joker origin story at the end of the year. Just a little. I won't get into too much detail, but I wasn't cast in a musical that I totally should have been cast in, but whatever. Also, the Filthy Frank show ended, and while the show had some toxic fans, it did leave a void in the internet that will probably never be filled. As for gaming, this year was excellent. For starters, Crash Bandicoot returned with the Insane trilogy, indie games shine bright with A Hat in Time, Hollow Knight, and Cuphead, Hitman was fantastic, Sony hit it out of the park with Horizon Zero Dawn, and Nintendo released one of the best Mario games ever with Super Mario Odyssey. The PS3 got its swan song with Persona 5, which is a game that I have not played. Epic Games released one of the biggest games ever, love it or hate it. Nintendo released one of their best consoles ever with the Nintendo Switch, and with it came one of the best open-world games ever with Breath of the Wild. 2014's Game of the Year got a sequel with Fractured Butthole, but in my opinion, none of these games came close to Sonic Mania. This game is so fluent, and it'll keep you surprised at every turn. Reused levels from previous games feel totally new, and the new levels are some of the best levels I've ever seen in a 2D platformer. And best of all, the game has a killer soundtrack, which is more or less expected out of a Sonic game. All this and more is why Sonic Mania is my 2017 Game of the Year. So 2018 came around, I graduated from high school, I went to Greece, and New Brunswick decided that Blaine Higgs would be a good premier. New Brunswick was wrong. As for gaming, 2018 was another solid year. Celeste was a game that I have never played, but heard great things about it. Red Dead 2 was mostly pretty good. God of War was fantastic. The Spyro remake was amazing. Smash Bros. Ultimate was fantastic. But my Game of the Year goes to Spider-Man. Okay, this game might have been really obvious to some of you, but others maybe not so much. Spider-Man is my favorite superhero, and Insomniac are the developers behind the greatest game of all time, so it's a match made in heaven. I loved unlocking costumes, traversing the open world, the story, the graphics, the combat. My only problem was the pace-killing Mary Jane and Miles Morales levels. The game could get a little repetitive, but that's forgiven when the core gameplay is so rewarding. And therefore, Spider-Man is my 2018 Game of the Year. So Trump got put in a peach, I guess. I went to Toronto, I got depressed, 2 of my pets died, Trudeau was re-elected, and Bernie announced his comeback. As for gaming, well, I played very little in 2019, so unfortunately my pick for Game of the Year is kind of normie. Here are the games that I played that actually came out in 2019. Okay, and here's the games that I played that came out in 2019 that I played extensively enough to form an opinion on. And here are the games that I considered for Game of the Year. And my pick for Game of the Year is Modern Warfare. Yep, I just went there. Modern Warfare is the best Call of Duty in years. You can now drive vehicles. The Warzone mode is something I've spent way too many hours on with friends. It's super fluent and fun. I know I've clowned on this series multiple times, but I really like Modern Warfare, and that is the reason it is my Game of the Year for 2019. I'm not going to describe the events of 2020 in great detail because everyone knows what went down in 2020. So what happened with gaming in 2020? Thankfully, gaming was excellent last year, which is a good thing for any year, but since we were all stuck at home, it was a godsend. Animal Crossing was everyone's cope method back in March. Half-Life came back, Sackboy Big Adventure rocked, the PS5 and Xbox Series X release. I haven't played Ghost of Tsushima yet, or Last of Us 2, but I heard great things about both of them. However, I did play Miles Morales, and that game rocked. Tony Hawk got a great remake, and Modern Warfare got its Warzone update. Now, it was really difficult choosing between these two games. My picks for 2020's Game of the Year are Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time, and Dreams. And my pick for 2020's Game of the Year goes to Dreams. It wasn't easy, and I mean it really wasn't easy choosing between the two, but I guess Dreams just appeals to me more. The creation suite is quite literally endless. You can make your own dream game, and I think that's just beautiful. But if games just aren't your thing, you can make short films, make your own music, or paint. And if creation just isn't your forte, you can just play other people's creations. And if that isn't your forte, you can play the awesome story mode. Put simply, Dreams has something for everyone. It's a near-perfect game. Why do I say near-perfect? Well, you can only record audio up to 15 seconds, which is a real problem for important music, and an even bigger problem if you want your game to have voice acting. But these problems will hopefully get fixed in an update. Nevertheless, Dreams is my 2020 Game of the Year. Now that the video is done, I'd like to do a mini countdown of all the Game of the Year winners. At 11th place, we have South Park The Stick of Truth 2014's Game of the Year. Don't let that last place spot fool you. This is an awesome game, but its length and glitches hold it back. At number 10, we have Super Mario Maker from 2015. Fantastic creation game. Not as in-depth as Little Big Planet, but still very accessible and fun. At number 9, 2019's Game of the Year, Call of Duty Modern Warfare. The best Call of Duty in years and one of the best first-person shooters of the past decade. At number 8, we have Uncharted 4 from 2018. Fantastic end to the Uncharted series. At number 7, Tearaway from 2013. One of the most underrated games of all time. At number 6, we have Dreams from 2020, a near-perfect game that came out in a very imperfect year. Number 5, Little Big Planet Vita from 2012, the most underrated Little Big Planet game by far. It gets extra points for the fact that it's portable. Number 4, Spider-Man 2018, one of the best superhero games ever made. Its only downfall is its repetition. Number 3, Little Big Planet 2 from 2011, the sequel to the game that saved the PlayStation 3. A few years back, this would have been number 1, but it had to be moved down a couple spots. Number 2, 2010's Game of the Year, Fallout New Vegas, easily the best RPG of the past decade, and it's not even a competition. It was nearly number 1, but one game beat it out. And at number 1, we have 2017's Game of the Year with Sonic Mania, the best Sonic game of all time, and my second favorite game of all time. It's flashy, fun, and it's a perfect video game. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to tune in and see more of this, please subscribe and tap the bell. And if you like it, share it with your friends. And I'll see you next time.